And welcome to Dude, What's the Bid? Episode 40. 4-0. Here. My name is Kevin Hill. I'm with Brust Pass Research. And as always, joined by Casey Larkin from Fairlanes. Casey, how are you doing?
Doing well, Kev. Doing well.
How was Manifest?
Manifest was great. It was crazy. It was busy. Made, 84 connections. They had a cool little tool there on the badges. Nice. So been doing a lot of follow-up. Had jury duty earlier this week. It was crazy.
Did you sit on one?
No, but, was considered for one. That finished up around, 1:30 or 2 after lunch. I was not selected for the initial jury. And then they said, hey, guys, we need to send you back downstairs. There's another couple cases that they're looking for jurors for. So I got pulled into another pool to be considered for another case in the afternoon, which I guess is kind of rare. So
was it a criminal or civil?
They were both criminal cases.
I've been on one jury in my life, and it was a civil case, and it was somewhat entertaining because it was just oddball. It was just an oddball case in New York City, and it was back before Airbnb and stuff, where you had people doing quite classified ads and just very Craigslist type of advertising, roommates, roommate finder thing, and you had these two battling companies or agents, you could say, and it was entertaining. It was they were crazy.
Good landlord war hashed out in court.
Sounds
like pretty entertaining, especially in New York City. That must have been an entertaining case.
Yeah, you had I think it was a Turkish guy who was very just out there. Who's his own attorney, right, pro se or whatever, and you had another guy, and he seemed to be more composed and everything, and the one guy got the other guy arrested, for some minor thing, and all of a sudden, he spends like 20 days in jail, and you're like, well, that's kind of odd, Can he make bail? I mean, bail's got to be like a couple $100 on this thing, and they try to keep it out, but it slipped in where he'd assaulted a Long Island cop one time, so he was on probation or whatever, right? He got a resisting arrest charge. And it was just all these little rabbit holes of just chaos.
Oh Lordy! Were you the foreperson on the jury?
I was actually.
I can see
which was strange, right? Yeah, I was the foreman on it, and it was just like, why are these guys? I can't even remember what the lawsuit, the money amount was, or. Very little of the case except for the highlights.
How long did that take?
About a week. On and off. By the time I got there and got selected into a jury, and maybe through 3 days, 4 days, I think we had to come back on a Monday. And then we deliberated for, I don't even know how long we deliberated for, maybe 3 hours or something. And came back with a verdict.
Good on you, man. We need folks doing their civic duty, right? I guess it's a privilege. So
I've never been called for jury duty anywhere except for New York, Manhattan, right? I got called like 3 or 4 times in 7 years.
Right. When I was growing up in Baltimore, I mean, as soon as you turn 18 and you're not a felon, they're hitting you with a jury summons for sure.
Yeah. So, well, good. You got your civic duty in. Hopefully you don't get called for a while longer.
Fingers crossed. But if I do, I guess I'll be happy to show up for jury duty and do my duty.
Yeah. So Manifest was good. You had 84 connections. Did you win any money in the casino at least?
Kev, I don't know if you believe me if I tell you this, but I didn't place a single bet while I was in Vegas.
That's good.
So I don't know if it was just trying to run around and make most of the time, or who knows? Maybe I'm growing up a little bit. got enough of that gambling out of the way in my 20s.
Yeah, you gamble every day anyway, so on things that aren't games, right? So
this is true.
No need to do it again. That's good. That's good. Well, we got a good show for you today. We have a very special guest here. It's Chris Kolquist, and he is the founder of Callaway. He's been in the freight industry for years, started out at C.H. Robinson. He was president at Freight Quote once C.H. Robinson purchased Freight Quote a few years ago. We'll get the exact year from him. But it's been almost 10 years now, I think. If my recollection holds up, that's about the time. But now he is doing consulting, doing investments, doing M&A work for the brokerage market. And he's got some products and tools out as well. So we're going to be discussing kind of how you build if you have a small brokerage, how do you build equity? How do you build equity for the best exit that you can get? Because a lot of those, it's very relationship based, but we'll get into it with Chris right now. Let me add him to the stage. Chris, great to see you.
Thanks for having me, guys.
Yeah. So just to get us started, I gave you a little bit of an intro, probably didn't do you justice. So can you explain to our audience kind of your background, how you got into freight, and your progression through your career?
Sure. So I've been in freight for over 20 years. I think you did mention, obviously, the Freight Quote, which I'll get into. But, I was fortunate. I started C.H. Robinson in 2004 with a little bit different background. I was kind of a finance background. So I got in fairly early and ran their M&A team when it was just me. So, again, lucky and timing that got to build that team up over time. And we were obviously very active, looked at a lot of different deals across a lot of different spaces. So I had great exposure, kind of built a small team around me. And then my passion, though, was really around when we would do acquisitions and get involved on the backside, which probably differentiated me. So as I built my team out, I spent most of my time with business owners up front, mostly small business owners. We obviously did some large acquisitions as well. And then I would personally get involved, or my team would get involved afterwards to make sure those work. So it's a little bit different approach, and ties into well to what I'm doing now. So kind of fast forward a few years, you had your dates right. We closed that deal from a Robinson Freight Quote in 2015. I subsequently got promoted to be the president down here. So I actually moved my family to Kansas City in 2015. I'm not wearing red because I'm a Chiefs fan, by the way. I was noticing that earlier. I'm more of a hockey guy. We have a big game tonight, so I'm wearing red for that tonight. So I moved the family down here. I had that role for 6 years, and it was nice because I put kind of the M&A behind me, and I had my heads down. I had a pretty big business to run, but still well connected with the Robinson team. So again, I was very fortunate in my career to see a lot of different deals. We did 17 deals when I was kind of running the M&A shop at Robinson. So, looked at thousands, our old metrics where we look at 100, bid on 12 and do 2 a year. So spent a lot of time with small business owners over that time. Back in those days, I traveled, and probably too much. I was on a lot of airplanes. So I think the business model today is a little bit easier. We can do podcasts, we can do teams. I think it's a lot better. So fast forward a little bit, I did the 6 years at Freight Quote and Robinson, and kind of left there, and actually took a break from logistics, which was great. I took a couple of years off. I launched Callaway in the summer of 21, and we did advisory work, investments, and M&A, and outside of logistics. So it gave me good exposure to other things than logistics. I mean, we did 4 investments under there, did a couple of technologies, some VCs, and some different things. Again, personally and from a team perspective, got other exposure. And then we said, hey, we're thinking about getting back into logistics. So, we repositioned Callaway. I went out to the market to raise some money and get some investors from an M&A perspective. And now spend my time really with business owners and talent. I kind of talk about those 3 pillars of investors, business owners, and talent. And we have different things. We've got a nice platform that you mentioned earlier called 007 Freight. We talk with a lot of small business owners as an option for them. yeah, we're heavy in the M&A market. For everyone on this call who's probably pretty close to that, it's been a tough market the last couple of years. The M&A market has obviously been tough. We've had to pivot a little bit where we've done more kind of investment work, but we're already seeing a lot more activity in 25. So I'm excited. We're expanding our team on the Coley way as well to kind of keep up with that. And I'm excited to have a lot of the dialogues with these business owners that I've had the last couple of years. But, last year it was really, Chris, love Coley. I love what you're doing. You came, grew up in the industry. You're an operator. You've sat in the chair, which is a big deal. And you have that type of president, CEO responsibility. But just timing wasn't right. So I think there's more stability in the market this year. I'm not saying it's gonna be a huge tailwind, but I think it's different. And I think it's going to drive some more M&A activity. Again, I really enjoy talking with business owners, and I know we were talking with Kevin and Casey, or I was earlier about some of those dynamics. So that's the background. We're excited for 25, and hopefully I can shed some light to obviously the audience, small businesses. I've seen a lot in my career. Things have obviously changed, but there's some things that haven't changed. Relationships still matter. Obviously, technology is in a much better spot and super exciting. Obviously, manifests recently, but I still believe relationships still matter in this business and within M&A.
It certainly does. So you've looked at a lot of brokerages over your career. From the acquisition point of view, from investment, and from consulting. What is kind of one of the major themes of successful entities and unsuccessful entities?
Yeah, again, it's a hard business, and I think it's really got to be operator led, and you got to roll up your sleeves. So, I've seen some of the businesses that don't do that, and I think focus is important, and as you're starting small and kind of getting bigger. So, what I love about what we do, there's just not one recipe for success. I talk with a lot of business owners, and they've done it a little bit different. Hard work is big. Being focused on the customer, there's some things in there that are fairly common. Building a good team, it is a people-based business. Now you have to make sure you've evolved, and I think there are some small businesses now that probably could use some more automation and technology, and there's some really good products and companies out there, and we talk a lot about them. I think that's one thing in today's world. You can't just rely on your team and kind of relationships. You got to be out in the market with different vendors and kind of partners. So, I think that's what's cool. There really isn't just one thing for success. And, I think there's a lot of different ways to get there, but it's a lot of hard work. What you're hearing the last couple of years, there's a sales and business development, right? Everyone's struggling with that. Nobody has that figured out. I spent a lot of my time, whether it's my investments, my M&A, or a little bit on the consulting, which is primarily investment and M&A related, trying different things there. And the environment's been tough the last couple of years around that. So again, what's cool about that is I talk to companies, and it depends on your culture, depends on your product mix, depends on some of those things. Where I've become a valuable partner for them is I've seen every business model I think that's out there. I'm sure there's ones I haven't, but again, I've been in such a fortunate spot from where I've been in my business model today that I get access to a lot of different businesses and business models. So it somewhat kind of depends on what you have as you think about that growth plan going forward. But I think that's probably the keys. You got to think about the future. You got to think about growth, and you got to think about what's next. And that's one thing I talk to a lot of business owners about is what's your goal? What are you looking to accomplish? And again, no right answer. It can be, Chris, I want to sell the business in 2 years. Chris, I want to, X million dollars, or I want to sell my management team, or, there's a whole host of, and it should be different for every business owner. I have a great appreciation. Obviously I own my own business and own businesses today. That is not an easy road. I came from, managing large businesses, buying small businesses, now being a business owner, plus buying small businesses. And I can really appreciate the challenge and the process that goes with that. So, it gives you a little bit of context as you think about being successful in that marketplace. It's definitely not easy.
Right. It's really, wow. So many questions, so many thoughts, Chris. A hell of an opening by you. So to go back to your days at C.H. Robinson, right? You guys closed 17 deals, and then Freight Quote was a tech player. Obviously, to your point, there's a lot of different ways to run a logistics company successfully. You've seen a lot of those different models. The way that Grok kind of explained this deal to me with Freight Quote earlier today when I was asking the question was, C.H. Robinson's a phenomenal smile and dial brokerage. Kind of buying Freight Quote to be, a nice technological piece that would allow you guys to service, the smaller customers as well. How many of those acquisitions you guys did were technology pieces that you were looking to like add in the business? How big a piece of the pie do you think technology is, was back then and like is today and will be in the future?
Yeah. I think it's a great question. That's changed and evolved. What I would tell you, if you go back in kind of history a little bit, 10, 15, 20 years, a lot of the big players like Robinson and Freight Quote have proprietary technology that most people didn't have. So it was a huge advantage. Now that's changed. I mean, you look in the last 10 years, that's evolved. So I would tell you in general, when Robinson was doing acquisitions, it was primarily not for their technology. We typically would bring them onto to the Robinson technology platform, and that worked pretty well. Freight Quote was different. That they had amazing technology. I mean, it was a technology company with a great business model and sales model around it. So when we went in and bought them, we had a specific plan to keep their technology in place, to keep their go-to-market and some of those type of things. And that was not normal because, again, a lot of the other acquisitions we'd buy niche businesses in a flatbed or a cross-border, and we'd make it part of a larger whole. And that was really effective to put them on them. We got renamed over time to Navisphere. So that was a very effective strategy. Freight Quote was different. And I think it's a really good question because when you talk about acquisitions, the technology piece is really important. And it's changed and evolved so much that there's such good technology that you can partner, you can buy, and everyone has a different thing. Typically, the bigger players are going to want to put you on their platform, and that makes sense. Sometimes that can be challenging, though, if you have a niche business that doesn't fit into that platform. Which is what Freight Quote at the time did. It just took Robinson and Freight Quote many years to kind of get those things closer. But I think it was a good strategy not to smash it in day one. So I do think the tech thing, when you're thinking about M&A, whether you're a small business or others, the tech has to be something high on your radar. And a lot of the people I talk today in the small, they actually look to us. And our 007 Freight platform has that. I'm like, hey, we have a really good tech. We've got good back office. I think we can lower the cost. We can get you guys away from some of the stuff you don't want. Because for these smaller players, for them to continually go to all the conferences, meet with all the vendors, talk, there's so much tech out there. It's actually overwhelming. I mean, at least it is for me. You guys are probably a little bit closer, but I have a tech matrix, right? I have a tech matrix, and I'm sure I don't see half of what's out there. And so it's even for me, and I obviously have multiple businesses underneath. It's hard to keep up with. So I actually think a lot of the strategies, how do you connect all this stuff from a technology?
Exactly.
That's the real secret sauce. If you can, so I know what you guys think, but that's my perspective on tech.
Yeah,
it is because it's overwhelming, right? The tech options out there, which is a good thing and a bad thing, right? It's overwhelming, and for a lot of small brokerages, it's challenging picking one out that works for your business and then actually implementing one, but implementing 4 or 5 altogether is a challenge because most of the brokers just don't really they certainly don't have a robust IT department or technology department in-house, right? So trying to piece all that together and making it work is challenging in itself.
For sure. It's interesting.
Yeah. I mean, I would tell you, I'm on a bunch of boards as well, right? And kind of what I've seen is there's such good technology and it makes sense on a one-off basis. So you start putting it into your stack, but you don't use it as much and kind of how you integrate it. So I think in the world today of the small and medium-sized broker, it's really trying to figure that out. And when we go in with companies, we'll chat with them, and then we'll give them other perspectives so they can use us as an expert to say, who do you use? Why do you use them? Doing it on your own it's just more challenging. People do it, and it's fine, but really navigating your way through. I mean, again, and you guys were just out at Manifest. I mean, and they on a one-off basis make a ton of sense, but you got to be careful. You've got workflow and a whole bunch of things in there that it becomes too complicated. And I always ask, when we're doing M&A, let me look at your tech partners, and I'm like, boy, you got a lot in here. How do you manage all that?
Oh, it's too funny. It's making me think about post I saw earlier this week from Chad Olson, that runs a automation company and does a lot of integrations. One of their customers acquired another 3PL, and on day one, fully integrated, moved everything over to their TMS. At the same time, I'm on month 3 of watching another customer try to stand up a fully spec'd data store and API to said data store. So it's interesting, I guess back in your time when you guys were acquiring companies at C.H. Robinson, it's cool to hear that, you stayed on to kind of be like I'm the sales guy, right? So the customer success is super critical. And you just kind of hinted at it. Like, are you buying technology and are you managing the change to make sure that you guys actually implement it and get the value out of it? Or not. So, I guess Chad and I were going back and forth, and it seems to be back in the day, having a bunch of data was a lot of value. Didn't matter if it was disparate data systems, but is a world emerging where interoperability is, just as valuable or, more valuable to scale and size?
The data thing's key. I would tell you, we had a bunch of different strategies. We did a lot kind of behind the scenes to get the whole data, aggregated. And then the question is, what are you using the data for? Is it for our customers and operating people, or kind of management, or it could be customers, could be a whole slew of things. But when we had kind of separate systems like that, whether in primarily M&A, we would make sure, obviously back office, we would consolidate all that, but we would make sure we had some analytics. And you can do that in today's world, right? You can have separate data lake analytics, all that kind of stuff kind of pulled together. But, you made that comment. I mean, one of the businesses we bought early in my career was actually an agency business. We were forced to move the entire business overnight, right? So we've done everything, and I've done everything from overnight, you're cutting the cord, to freight quote, you're going to do that over time. And it depends on the business, right? I mean, if you've got a lot of connections with your customers, or if you don't, contractual versus spot, there's something to be said for, if you get in, you do it too slow, that can be disruptive. Again, there's not one answer, but our approach and my approach historically is the person putting the deal together is also being responsible afterwards, because that's when the hard work starts. And we used to joke, you can put deals together. That's kind of easy. It's actually making them work. The other thing, and I think it's, a lot of the executives would have a lot more confidence. And to be honest, they wouldn't do a deal unless they knew we would be helping them, because that's what we did. And my team was so used to doing that. I had built relationships, and we kind of had a playbook, right? And I think that works. Even if I think about Coley today, we have a playbook. And for us on the M&A side, when we're on the buy side, and we want to partner with someone, it's just not partnering, we're waving and saying goodbye. We're all in this together, and we put a plan in place up front, but the real hard work starts after, because there's always surprises, right? I tell my team, we're going to put a plan together. I got to have a plan, but it will be 100% different once we hit that, and we'll have to pivot, and we'll have to change, and we'll accelerate or slow down. But for us, a lot of it is have a good plan together, but focus on your people and focus on your customers, right? That's where we come out of the gates pretty, that's a consistent way. And obviously carriers too, depending on what your mix is. Right. But that's been kind of our approach. And again, I do think about having, again, we go to the market differently. Obviously, if you think about if you're a small business or a medium-sized business looking to sell, you have strategics like the Robinsons of the world who are great. You got private equity. We go to the market as an industry growth partner where we know the industry and we have capital, right? So we're a little bit different, and we're focused in logistics. That's kind of what we do. That's where we've spent our time. That's, if you think about our team and network, and to us, it's like we're actually going to bring you value post deal versus capital, which is important. But that's one of the things we talk about. So we'll talk a lot more about, for me, again, the financials will be there. We'll do diligence. It's all important. We know enough about that. We've seen a lot of these. It's spending time up front with the owner. And what do you want to accomplish? What do you want your goals to be? How do we make this thing work for your customers, your stakeholders, your employees? And really think hard about the risks to do that. And a lot of them, we walk away and like, this doesn't make sense. And like, for whatever reason, you'd rather do that up front than try to force something that doesn't fit.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
So we talk about small and medium-sized brokerages, right? How do you define a small broker compared to medium broker, and kind of what buckets? How do you bucket the brokerage world?
Yeah, I think one bucket I would definitely put out there is, and we've seen this number for a while, obviously inflation and other things over the years, but I would say the 50 to 100 million is typically a hump for a broker, right? That's typically where you get to a spot of, okay, what do I do next? You've got some scale, so you've had some success, but to get to over 100 and say you want to get to 250 or 500, that's typically where it gets harder, because you can have, we see a lot of a founder with some good people around them and some good relationships who's really good can build a very successful brokerage to 25 or 50 million. And then getting over the next hump and then getting up to closer to 100 gets harder. You got to have a broader team. You got to have some different strategies. You're getting in some different segments. It becomes more complex, right? And so that's kind of where we like to play and bring some value. So we kind of look at it. You get the 25 to 50 and kind of 50 to 100. I think there's a bunch of, and as you know, Kevin, there's a ton of those in there. Once you get over 100, 250, that number is smaller. We have plans to go from 100 to 500 or whatever it is. Most of the stuff we're looking at, we're not looking to be huge billions of dollars. It's just not our play, which is interesting. Again, I came from that world, right? That obviously it's public information on the stuff that we bought from Robinson and what Freight Quote was. So, when we were buying companies, we bought small, medium, and large. And I would tell you at the end of my career, we were not buying small ones anymore. So it doesn't make a ton of sense for the bigger strategics to go small. But early on, we did a bunch of it. So I have experience there. And then obviously what we're doing now. So me and my team have chosen to play in the small and medium because I think there's more value and growth there. And some of it can be more fun. You're dealing with founders and private companies, and just a little bit more fun versus the bureaucracy and red tape and some of the challenges that come with big companies, which I had plenty of those as well. So from a size perspective, that's, I'd throw out those 2 or 3 numbers. But you got a lot of people that have been around this 25 number for a while, or 30 or 40. And I talked to them and said, what's your growth plan? And some of them don't really have one, or they do. And that's fine. I mean, it can be a good little lifestyle business. So, but I think that's the one thing I kind of push people a little bit is, at least have a thought process, succession planning, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah.
And if you get hit by a bus, there's a lot of people that are dependent on you, right? Obviously family first and whatever happens financially, but think about your team. I work with a bunch of these, got 25 people on their team or 50 people on their team. You got families behind them. What happens to the business, right? What about your customers who've been loyal to you for years and years and years, right? And so I will push a little harder saying, try to think about your goals, try to think about, equity value, like you said, Kevin, and there's things you got to do. And to me, it's not a light switch. You need to start thinking, ahead on that. And you got to, like, a lot of the scenarios I'm working on right now are that last couple of years have been, we know what the market's been. So we've been prepping to get to either a sale or a transaction. We've been trying to do some things that will prepare the owner in this case to have some options. And that's what you really want. I want to have options. You can't just raise your hand and say, okay, I'm ready to sell. And the business isn't really there. And there's some things you got to clean up. So that becomes more challenging in that environment.
It is challenging, especially in brokerage, really building the equity as a founder, right? Because as you're saying, you look at that 25 to the $50 million mark, it's very founder focused, very inner circle kind of hustle. But to get over those humps, you have to delegate, which is tough for a lot of people to do. And you have to create systems, and the organization just naturally, every organization just naturally accumulates red tape and bureaucracies. The bigger it gets, the less you're involved in day-to-day activities, and you're basically passing the reins off to others. It's just tough to do, not only to execute, but also to allow to happen for a lot of people.
Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'll go ahead, Casey.
No, I mean, to that end, like, you look for a specific type of personality, a specific type of, behavior, and, guy, or I guess girl running, right? I don't know if there are too many female founders of multi-million, $100 million freight brokerages. Maybe there are, but is there anything you look for, like, characteristically in that person? And, some of the, I think about the technology is obviously like a key piece of things. And I heard Kevin Nolan say one time, building great freight brokerage is not about great tech, right? It's, hiring the right people and empowering them to find the technology that works best for them to help kind of scale the business and develop the relationship. So, I guess to that point, like, what, you see any good practices, any, ways to help organizations develop that type of culture, or,
as I think about your question, it can go a couple different ways. And I think it's a good one, because what do you look for as you think about that founder owner and you think about value, right? And so we look very closely at that, and there's multiple reasons we do. So the first one is, obviously, if we're on the buy side, we love for a founder to be less involved in the business, good delegation, doesn't have a lot of the core customer relationships. You think about a transition risk, right? And they're all different. Now, most of them in our brokerage world are still pretty involved, have some core customer relationships. The other thing that I guess I'm pretty passionate about, and they probably don't, they built that business and the people around them. So the fact that it's their business and people are loyal to them, I said, when we pull you out, that's more impactful than you think. Because I get a lot of them like, yeah, I'm working 10 hours a week. I'm working 20 hours a week. And some of it's true. And they're working on strategy and some of the things. I said, yep, and yep. But if we pull you out of this business and we put someone else in, or we promote someone on your team, that's impactful, because you are the founder, you are the owner, you are the brand. They're loyal to you. You hired them. So again, we look very closely at the founder, owner, or the person running the business. What value do they bring? What do they like to do? Again, and we can do different ways. Like, we've done transitions where, like, we got some of them who are doing everything. I'm like, we're going to pull you out of all the back office, all the other things. You just want to go sell and have customers. That's a great solution for us as a buyer. For you, you're still there. We can. So it all kind of depends, but you got different scenarios. I think about, FreightQuote and Tim Barton, who's the founder. He's a genius, right? He built unbelievable technology. So I knew going in that we were not going to be able to do the same thing he did. We were sort of not positioned. We weren't Tim, right? So his ability to build industry-leading technology was fairly unique, and I think he was ahead of the industry. So when we went in there, we knew we had to grow differently, and we had to do things kind of different. So again, we'll look at each founder scenario, and that was obviously a bigger deal to a smaller deal, and say, how do we supplement? In a perfect world, we would love to have other managers already in place that could be groomed, maybe groom more quickly. We do supplement management as needed, and that typically is needed. So obviously, we're in the industry and we know people. Our got to have that core in there as well. So, but yeah, I think that focusing on the founder and implications and the value they're bringing today and going forward, a really important piece.
And that's a really important piece of building equity in your company, right? Is following this, being involved but not too involved, making sure that the company can succeed if you sell it tomorrow or get hit by a bus tomorrow or whatever it may be. If you just generally just leave, that the relationships are in place, that you're not everything to that business. I mean, it's kind of one of those paradoxes almost.
When you think about equity value, so there's a few things we typically would say up front on, equity value. Obviously, customer concentration, risk in the business. If you got concentration management, start working on all those things. So if someone does want to come in and buy you, they can give you a reasonable multiple. They don't have to put discounts all over the place because of your business. But the other thing is growth, right? So people buy businesses for growth. We obviously have a growth plan that we come in, but we're not very high on buying, a really stable business with no growth plan. I think our 007 freight business is a good platform for someone that's kind of like that, and that's a smaller platform for us that we put businesses on. But if you're trying to really go out and get aggressive and hopefully get a really good monetization type event, they're going to look at this and, is this business going to grow, right? So, I think the thing you brought up earlier that comes to mind is, again, if we're using round numbers and depending on the size of the business, but say the owner is bringing home, $1 million a year, right? So, what I say is, if you really want to get some equity value and sell this thing, you're going to have to bring in some management to take over. And because some of them like, well, God, man, it costs a lot of money to bring in top people. It costs a lot of money to bring in good salespeople who can fit, which is very hard, right? And so I think that's the challenge is, because the reality is they could keep running this thing on, I take $1 million out of the business every year. Things are okay. They could be better. And so I understand why they don't do that, right? I understand why they don't, but to your point, if you're creating equity value, you might have to do some things different, because $1 million stable business that really isn't growing, you don't have a growth plan for, is not worth as much as maybe you've invested a few dollars. You said, hey, we had a one or 2 years we went down in profitability. Now we're showing a track record coming back up, but we got a strong management team. We got a good growth plan, and we're like, okay, now that's interesting, and you just be able to attract more buyers and create more equity value in those type of scenarios.
For sure. I guess it's really one of those scenarios where you want to kind of probably hire slow and fire fast. Or I guess is it the other way around? Anyways, you don't want to underpay, right? Or hire somebody who's not qualified for that job. I think Brad Jacobs, right, was writing about this in his book. He would just always overpay, make sure that you get a great management team in there so that you do have the opportunity to grow the business.
Again, and I would say, and obviously I was in the M&A world when he was coming in, and you got to give him credit. Yeah, if you think about, again, there's one way to measure it, shareholder value, and he created a lot of it. So people can have different opinions on that, but he was very, very successful doing it. I know a lot of people, because I would be like, I think what he's doing can make some sense. Now I'm an M&A guy, and they're like, oh, you just want to go buy companies. I'm like, I think he's going to pull it off, right? And even I was surprised exactly how he did it, but Casey, to your point, that was one of his strategies. Now he has got, I don't know if I call it artificial capital, but he has got very unique capital behind him that most people do not have. So he's in a little bit different position to do that. But if you just think about that, I mean, the other option, and we think about equity value, and the other option I'll see a lot is, okay, I'm a small business owner making whatever it is. I'm going to try to hire a GM, president, CEO, depending on the size of business and what they think about titles, whatever. But the person who's going to run it, it's kind of a hit or miss. If you get it right, fabulous. But a lot of cases you don't, and so that's why the M&A thing is more intriguing. And again, we structure things different. We can buy it all. We can roll equity. We can do different things, but there's been scenarios where like, well, I think we can help solve your challenges. We've had a couple, they brought a couple people in to be the president, and it just hasn't worked because it's hard. You bring them from the outside, if they fit the culture, could be timing. It could be the founder isn't letting them do what they should. I mean, all over the board, the alternative to that is, okay, you partner with someone who brings some fresh capital in, you leave some capital still in the business, and you can get some upside from them running it, them bringing resources and doing it differently. Again, just another option, not for everyone. I think it's a good option. But like you said earlier, I mean, it's when you're investing in the business, which a lot of it's people, obviously tech is a big piece as well. But on the people side, yeah, you could be hiring a lot and firing fast or whatever your model is. I do think, again, in today's world, the sales is such a big challenge. I mean, it's really hard. And obviously, in today's world, it's hard to sell being where the market's at. So, I got a lot of people are raising money to hire a sales team. I'm like, that's interesting. I'm not in on that, right? And that was just my opinion and that's been happening a few times. I'm like, you're raising money, and they haven't proven that they can, actually have a sales team that's effective. They don't know what their strategy is. I'm like, whoa, that's interesting, but it just goes to show how hard it is. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That is true.
It's because you think about it, like people are like, well, what's your strategy? And they're like, I don't know. I could do some vertical new services. I got one. I'm going to hire a sales team, and they're going to produce this much of sales, and you get outside investors who don't know the industry. Probably, I'm sure that's where the money's coming from. And I'm like, could happen, small chance, but it could. Well, I guess we'll see. I mean, you just never know.
It's weird to me because when I think about brokerage and being in brokerages, it's fundamentally a sales and marketing organization. I mean, that's if you look at technology, right? You build the technology, and then everyone always has a hard time selling that technology, going to market and things like that. I understand that because you're building a product. Brokerage, you have your service, right? And it's all sales and marketing, whether you're selling to shippers or selling to carriers, you're matching those up. And there's not a lot of other, key ingredients to it. You have to be a salesperson. Right. Yeah. I mean,
and if you think about, $25-50 million, the reality is the founder could be their best salesperson, and probably in one way, shape, or form probably is, and has brought in a lot of those customers. I mean, to be a successful, like you said, brokerage, you have, as a founder, owner, you have to be good at that. You might have other people that are better, but you got to help close. That has to be. And I do tell people, because we look at other asset light models and we do different things. But I said, in brokerage, you got to be aggressive. You got to have sales process. You have to close deals, because
you certainly have to be good
about
enough.
But in my freight quote world, right?
Yeah, you have to be good enough.
Freight quote world,
Go ahead. Sorry. Go.
No, I was just going to say, in my freight quote world, we were heavy sales. So everyone knows, we're basically technology, small business, but really good sales team and really good relationships. But when you're in that small business space, people would talk about a leaky bucket within 3PL. We were always losing customers. I used to say, well, we have holes in our bucket, right? We were losing. It's just the nature of the beast. So we had to go so hard to the market. Some of the technology tools allowed us to do that. But when we were analyzing the business a long time ago, that's the one thing we probably saw that others didn't. Everyone knew the tech and they were good in LTL. I'm like, there's a sales machine there that was not very, again, for having as many people at that time in Kansas, primarily Kansas City, that was really powerful.
Yeah, because to be a founder of a brokerage company, you have to be at least good enough in sales to sell enough to where you hire somebody better than you or anybody else, right? There's no other way out of that box, definitely. I think that's just part of it.
Yeah.
Let's talk a little. Go ahead, Casey. Sorry. No, go ahead.
Before we pivot, I'd love to know, how have you seen, successful sales guys who've started brokerages train great sales teams? What does that look like in your experience?
Yeah, you've definitely seen it. again, if you think about doing it at a smaller scale, like if you got, and I do believe I tilt commercially, obviously I think the carrier side is really important. I think commercial is a part of carrier. So, but you got to tilt towards building and growing and getting out in the marketplace and building relationships and just, you can't sit back and wait for it to happen. There's no brokers that I've seen that have been able to be successful doing that.
Right.
And you just, but you
to go back to C.H. Robinson,
people that have,
I was just going to say, like, you had some great salespeople that have come out of C.H. Robinson. There's some other, schools, if you will, some coaching trees, if you will. I think of guys like, you probably worked with Chris Torrance. Do you know Chris Torrance? Back at C.H. Robinson?
Yeah, I mean, there's definitely, that's the advantage of being part of a Robinson or some of the bigger ones. Your sales train's amazing. Your resources are amazing. You surround yourself by really good, and then you've got a big brand now. So I think most of that's good. I think the part that you might, that I see a little bit, because if you think about being successful in some of the bigger ones and trying to move smaller, it's harder because they're so reliant on a big brand and people teeing it up for them, and they're great closers. I mean, you know some of them. These are just great salespeople. In the smaller world, though, it's a little harder, and so I have seen people that have struggled to do that. But to your point earlier, I mean, I've seen a lot of successful commercially driven people build a brokerage. If you build 2, 3, 4, 5 really good salespeople around you, you can build a very sizable business. You don't need to have 25. You shouldn't have 25 unless you're really big. I mean, you don't need that many, but if you get ones that are really good, that's extremely valuable.
And that is where technology becomes really valuable, right? That's the only time it becomes really valuable. If you have strong, say a 4 or 5 person strong sales team that can bang out a lot of volume, a lot of freight, having those tools to be able to execute as much as they can sell. That's when, that's really the only time. Right? I won't say the only time, but that's the time you want, right? Where technology really works in your favor. Yeah. Let's talk
Great. And there's a lot of good CRMs up there.
Yeah. I was just going to say, let's talk a little bit about
I think there's a little bit of
007 freight. Sorry.
Yeah. So we're super. And again, if you think about my background, I'm like, I like the relationship selling. I love the LTL business. I love the truckload business, but kind of in a more kind of relationship and from an LTL outsource. So we've got a really good platform. And the way we structure, it's a little different. It's kind of based on business ownership. It's a combination of what I've learned over many, many years, called franchise model, business owner. It's a combination of all that, but it's different. We've got a kind of a smaller community. But again, what's changed in the last 10 years, you got access to technology and different things, and the marketplace has changed, and everyone's got access to DAT and truckload rates. So the playing field is a little bit closer. So as we looked at the marketplace, a few years ago, said, what kind of business model kind of is effective. And so that's been really effective for us. And then it works well under Kolquist because you're like, hey, there are some small brokers that this would be a really good place for. Because historically, if something less than 25 million or even 25 is hard for a lot of buyers to get comfortable with, right? So, historically, and even today, because at that size, you got the founder, maybe it's so much tied up into them, and they'll probably have customer concentration. They definitely have management concentration. You lose a couple of key pieces and you're kind of screwed, right? So it's hard. And so what is really good for us here is we're building this organically, which makes a lot of sense. But then we also have had, when we're out in the marketplace, and sometimes we don't know the size of the companies, and we're saying, hey, maybe they're a little bit smaller than we thought. And so we've got a really good option. You can come on our platform. You don't have to worry about back office, working capital, which is a big deal, right? I mean, all these things that these small brokers, I don't want to deal with that. I'm like, great. Because historically what they're really good at is relationships and selling, and so this is a really good fit. So that's been a good success story for us that we kind of saw, but it's evolved more quickly. And this is where having, kind of the Coley way and me and connecting those things has made some sense. And I'm like, we're already out talking with small and medium-sized brokers, right? And so we just have a really good platform option for the smaller ones. So yeah, we're super excited about that. And I do think this year, again, I think people are going to have to think about doing something. And I'm not saying they have to sell or merge, or I just think there's going to be more activity out there because the market's been tough. And I think they're like, yeah, if I could, because again, I typically haven't been a big merger supporter, but at the same time, if you can find a good partner, whoever that is, that you can build it better together, you got more stability, you should probably look at those options.
It is funny. There's not too much M in the M&A world.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, if you think about the merger, and I was always kind of anti-merger of equals, it's just hard to pull off. I do think though, again, a few of the boards or investments that we have, there's some stuff where we've been thinking about it. And again, if I go from my history of that's not going to work to I've been a little bit more open to, and it has to be structured right. And trust me, it's probably not the primary play, but if you're at a point, you get two small brokers, each doing 25 million in different verticals, and you're kind of like, what are we going to do? And can we put something together? You're going to get some savings on maybe whatever it is. Otherwise, you keep going separate. You're still going out and you're still working really hard to do the same stuff. I mean, there's something to be said for that. But the one thing I would say about that, and that I've said in the ones that I'm involved in, you got to have a really close relationship, and it works better when you've known each other for years. You can't just cold call. Hi, Casey. Hi, Kevin. Let's merge our companies all equally together, and we're all going to get along great. It's probably a little harder.
You're talking about verticals and niches. I mean, which verticals and niches really catch your eye whenever you're looking at brokerages? Which ones are really nice to be part of?
Yeah, we do have a tilt towards niches and that type, and that's probably not too dissimilar to others. If it's a core brokerage, we'd like to have some type of differentiator, and it could be different things, but I think the vertical focus or service focus is key. The cross-border stuff has been a big, and now with all the tariffs and everything going on, we did a deal. We were at Robinson, so I know that space a little bit better. So I probably have a personal tilt towards that. But I think you've got some other really good things out there that we've been high on, and we'll kind of see. But there's a lot of little niches out there. I mean, we've seen some cool stuff on the final mile. That one still hasn't made as much progress on consolidation / There's still a ton of them out there. I mean, and now you got some good tech out there that's taking a different approach. So I think that's being helpful, but I still think overall, that's why we're all talking here. I mean, there's literally, you can say how many MC broker numbers there are, but there's so many smaller little niche that are bringing value within the supply chain environment, which is, again, as I think about why I came back into logistics, sometimes I think I'm crazy. But you take a step back and you're like, this is a huge space that still has enough complexity and it can be fun because it is amazing. When I went down to freight quote heads down a little bit running the business, and then I, was spending a couple of years outside of it, I popped my head back up and I'm like, wow, there's companies I've never heard of. There's new companies coming out of the woodwork every day. You go to these conferences. I mean, it's truly amazing. It's a testament to the cool overall market we're in. Some people may say it's a little saturated and diluted. That's fair to some degree, but I also believe there's a ton of opportunity for people to take the next step. Again, whether it's M&A, merger, investment. We're big fans of management buyout. You won't hear a lot of people talk about that, but that's a strategy and structure that we have a specific playbook on. That's a good one. Most people aren't able to pull that off because the management team doesn't have the confidence to do it, don't want to take on a bunch of debt and risk. And so we've come in and we'd say, well, here's what we'll do. We'll bring some capital. We still want the management team to take on some risk. What we would ask the owners to do, though, is help finance that, right? So everybody's got some, and then we're going to give them some confidence that we can do this because we know the industry, right? And we're putting our own capital in. So, and we like it because we're like, as long as we like the management team, obviously we wouldn't do that unless we're willing to back the management team. But that's been a winning scenario that isn't as commonplace out there. that we've had some really good situations and deals that I think we should do more of. And I'm going to, some of the ones I'm working on right now specifically, it feels like there's a tilt towards that. But it's amazing. A lot of people don't want to take that risk. I mean, which I get. I'm a business owner too, so that's a big risk when you're like, wait a second, I've been running the business, but not really, right? I've been here, and now you're asking me to take a really, really big piece of debt, and my spouse is all nervous, and so not an easy thing, not for everyone, but in the right scenario, it's going to be a really good answer.
Definitely is. Chris, thanks for stopping by today. It's been a good conversation. Do you have anything else, Casey? Sorry.
No, I don't think so. I really appreciate the time, Chris. Really fun conversation. Learned a lot from you, so I appreciate you taking an hour out of your afternoon to hop on here with us.
Yeah, I appreciate it, guys, and hopefully the rest of the audience got some for that. Obviously, my information's out there at Kolquist, which is my platform company, and my email and everything's out there. And then obviously 007 is one of our companies. So if you you can definitely get a hold of me either way. And looking for the game tonight. I don't know if we have any Canadians on the audience. I have good friends that are Canadian that I'm texting kind of as we speak, but looking forward to for all those hockey fans tonight.
So 007 Freight, does that have its own website as well? Can people go and check that out? Or?
Yep, it's basically that, www.007freight.com.
Okay.
Yep.
Check out the solutions and the platform for that, and they can reach out to you directly. LinkedIn probably is a great method to do that. Chris Kolquist.
Yep. Great.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much, sir.
All right, thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Chris.
So, Casey, were you inundated or overexposed at Manifest with all the technology vendors? Was it?
It's an interesting ratio. It did seem like it was a vendor party to a certain extent. There was some cool tech. A lot of folks had added like AI to their names, which is cool to see people working on. But yeah, I don't know if it was great for me, right? And what I was looking to do. There's just so much tech out there, right? It's like, how do you figure out, what is the best tech to use? I don't know. Hire some great people. Have them help you figure it out, I guess.
That's the best way to do it, always. It always is. Well, any other parting thoughts?
No. Pretty stoked for the hockey game as well.
Yeah.
Should be an awesome tilt. They had 3 fights in the first 9 seconds last time they played, and Canadians were booing the national anthem. So a lot of bad blood out there tonight. But hockey, James Bond, and Freight, some cool interests. Chris was a wonderful guy. So
yeah,
it's a fun show.
Cool. Well, everybody go out and have a great Friday. The rest of this afternoon, great Friday, great weekend. Make some margin, make some dollars. And we'll see you back here next Thursday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 1 p.m. Central for Dude, What's the Bid?
Yes, we will. Talk with Garrett Allen.
Yeah,
building the open source TMS over there. On LinkedIn, on YouTube. But anyways, also record port volumes out of LA, Los Angeles, I guess, in January.
There we go.
Hopefully we've got some of that freight coming back, and the economy picks up. I think should be a pretty nice back half.
It is. We're almost through 2 months of the year. It's crazy to even think about. But next week, Thursday's 27th, so Friday's the end of the month, and on to the final month of the first quarter. It's scary to even think about.
And the Q1, it's wild.
It really is. Man, oh man. But go out, relax, watch some hockey, do whatever you do, and we'll see you next week.
We will. See you, Kevin.
See ya.